Hello YouTube! So in response to popular demand, we are back with another video series. Today, to celebrate Valentine's Day, we are going to express our undying love for France. And we're going to talk about the 10 things that we love about France and that France does better than both the US and New Zealand. For those of you who don't know yet, this is Kate. She is the mastermind behind the blog Unintentionally Frenchified, which I will link down below. And of course, to celebrate this day of love, we have actually done 2 videos today. So there's a video on Kate's channel, which is about the things that we absolutely love about dating French men. So if you want to check that out, go and find her channel and subscribe to her too, because she's awesome. So without further ado, let's get into the things that we love about La France.
I don't think anyone will be surprised that one of the very first things that we love about France is the food in France. It's so amazing here. And so moving to France was definitely a big eye-opener with all of the breads and the cheeses and the dishes. No one's exaggerating when they say that the food in France is to die for.
Yeah, it's definitely not overhyped, that's for sure. And I think through living in France, I've fallen in love with the simple pleasures of food and eating all over again. I've discovered a lot of things. I think you've definitely got to stay open-minded when you see this big saucisson from Lyon in front of you and you think, oh, how am I going to attack that?
It's not just even about the actual food, it is taking the time to enjoy a meal. It's also just a ritual to sit down and have food that is really enjoyable.
You open that crusty baguette and you put some nice cheese on it, and down in the south we often roast chestnuts over the fireplace, and it's just heaven, culinary heaven. I didn't realize that I could love something so much as I love this, but I love the TGV in France, and I know there's going to be a lot of French people out there who are going to hate me for saying this. It's late. Yeah. But we don't have this in New Zealand. I mean, we're stuck. We're completely, we either get to fly, which is expensive and a hassle, you know, going out to the airport, etc., or we drive. We drive everywhere. And honestly, having a train that can take you from Paris to Marseille in 3 hours is so handy and so easy.
Just in general, public transportation is really great in France, and it's definitely a step above what you can find in the US, and the TGV is a perfect example of zipping across the country.
Even in smaller cities like Montpellier, for example, I really loved the tram system. I think things come very regularly, whereas in New Zealand, even in Auckland, which is our biggest city, I mean, sometimes there's 20-minute waits between buses.
Easily, France is efficient at this, and they do it way better.
They do.
So the third thing that we love living in France is the architecture. It goes without saying that, especially coming from the US, which is quite a young country compared to France, you can walk by 400-year-old buildings and 600-year-old buildings, and you can live in an apartment that was built in the 1800s, and everything has a lot of history, and everything can be quite different because it comes from different time periods. Walking down the cobbled streets of any place in France, any small town, it's just really beautiful.
Obviously, Paris is beautiful, that goes without saying. I'm not going to go into too many details about that, but outside of Paris, this blew my mind. All throughout Burgundy, you discover these beautiful medieval villages, and they've still got the town well where you draw the water up, and you've got the bridge and the clock tower, and needless to say, in Provence, that terracotta coloured rooftops with the blue and the green shutters and doors, it's just so beautiful. Visually, France is a very, very beautiful country, and the architecture definitely helps.
I think this is easily Rosie and my favorite on our list. It is the amount of time off of work that you get here.
Congé payé.
Vacation. The minimum amount of time you can have in France is 5 weeks. 7 weeks is probably a pretty average time off. So,
what that means, it's not just about going on vacation, but it's really like that facilitates my life so much. I can go home to New Zealand for a month, and I can still have 3 to 4 weeks off to enjoy Europe.
I think as a foreigner as well living in France, it's a little bit of comfort knowing that you have not only enough time to go home and see your family, at least, I mean, because I'm closer than Rosie, the US, I go home at least twice a year, but then we also have time with Robin as a couple to go explore other places, where if we lived in the US, I know one of the downsides of that would be all of our vacation time would be coming to visit Robin's family.
Exactly, it wouldn't really work the other way around, and that's something that I really appreciate about living in France. France. So with that being said, I think in general in France you have a better balance between work and life in general. And I've noticed over here that it's not very well seen actually to be that super like overly ambitious kind of person that's always working and hustling for that next step up, the next pay rise, and sort of giving up their lives, answering emails up to 1 o'clock in the morning. And in France there's this word called careerist, and it's like, it's got a negative connotation actually. As a result, this is something that's positive for me because I have learned to chill a little bit about work. Kate and I were saying the other day, like, France is the only place where we've actually been told by our managers to care a bit less about work.
Like, don't be so invested. The French really enjoy a balance between your work life and your personal life. And that's not to say that there aren't people who aren't working long hours or doing similar things to being in the US, but as a whole, we find that it's a very more laid-back society. You should work hard at work, but then you should really appreciate your personal time. That's not to say, though, if there's like something really busy going on at work that people don't bring work home, or that's not something when there's like a high period.
Just like everywhere.
Yeah, but just not on such a regular basis that we can find, I think, in the US and New Zealand.
Exactly.
So the next one is a little bit egotistical on our part, but we would say most expats, when you are living abroad, whether it's in France or anywhere, you become a little more interesting than when you were living back at home, because you're not French, you're not the typical person that they meet, you don't have the typical background, you don't speak the same language, and so there's naturally a little bit of curiosity around you, a little bit of mystery that would never happen back home.
Exactly. I kind of love this halo effect that I seem to have in that I say, hi, I'm Rosie, I'm from New Zealand, and they're like, New Zealand, wow, where are you from? I'd love to go there, and suddenly you're interesting, and I think it's...
without doing anything.
Yeah, I don't do anything. I don't deserve any credit. Like, I can't help where I was born. You do feel special. People are interested in you, and it's really easy to connect with people and to tell your story. And so that's also just a nice little side benefit too.
So the next two are directly linked to the fact that France is a socialist country, and so there's a lot of protection around citizens, and one of the ways that French people are very protective is in the workforce. So it is very expensive and difficult to fire somebody, but mostly expensive. So if you happen to lose your job or there are pay cuts, you're always taken care of from the government.
Exactly. It's, thank you to the forebearers of France who have absolutely fought for their rights on this, because you don't have to stress about work. You never have to think about the plan B, what if I lose my job? Because if you lose your job, you'll either have, 6 months notice and a huge payout, or you'll be protected through, a comfortable unemployment allowance. There'll be all sorts of things that will allow you to be okay. And that brings us on to our next point, which is of course around the universal healthcare that we can find in France. And I'll pass this one on to Kate, because in general we are taken care of quite well, but I know it's not necessarily the case in the States.
It's very, very different in the States versus here. So I take just a little pill every day for my thyroidism, and just for example, in the States with insurance, that costs me every month $30, and it's free in France. And even before I had all of my medical stuff set up in France, I was paying out of pocket for this medicine. It was the exact same medicine. It cost me €2. I mean, there are exceptions to things, but all major things are free. I'm never worried about, am I going to be able to pay my coverage? If I lose my job, what's going to happen with my insurance? And it's just a really relaxing feeling.
I pay around €50 per month for my mutuelle or health insurance, which just tops everything up to 100% coverage. And it means that, for example, every 2 years I have a brand new pair of reading glasses. I can get contact lenses for free. I go to the dentist and get my teeth cleaned for free. All of these things mean that you never have to worry about your health care.
Okay, so number 9 is about cheap alcohol. So not everything is cheap in France, but one of the really interesting things that I was surprised about when I came over here is that wine is incredibly cheap. You can easily get a good bottle of wine for €4 in the supermarket, and drinking wine in a restaurant is cheaper than ordering a Coke. So I just don't become an alcoholic when you move to France, because it's just really surprising how wine is often the cheapest thing to drink on the menu.
So the last thing that we want to say that we love about France, we love where it's located in the world, because you can take a train and you'll be in London, or you take a 1-hour flight, you can find yourself in Italy, and when you cross those borders, the world changes. You've got a new language, a new culture, new food, new fashion, and it's like you've been transported to another planet.
Yeah, coming from the US, it's such a big country. You've got to drive a while to get there, so you can't find it as easily and as quickly as you can find it in France. You just take a train 2 hours and you're in London.
Yeah, even within France, like France is such a mosaic of different cultures. Last year we went to Corsica, which is a beautiful island just off coast of the south of France, and it really felt like I could have been in Australia. You just feel like you're transported somewhere completely different, and it's just a few hours away from Paris. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video on the things we absolutely love about France. Let us know down below in the comments what you love about France or what you love about your own country, and we wish you a very happy Valentine's Day today. May lots of love come your way this year, and until next time, I'll say a bientôt. Bye.